Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to review some of the commonly used tools in the second stage shelter group. My name is Kat Van Willingen. I am the Research and Projects Advisor with the Alberta Council of Women Shelters, and providing the bulk of your training today is Susan Plessick, who has consulted with ACWS for a number of years and spent many years working in shelters as well.
Good morning, everyone.
So I will jump right in to give you a bit of a background on the second stage project before Susan takes you through the tools. But I do want to request, if you guys are having any issues with sound, that you just send us a message through the chat room or through questions. And also that you feel free at any time to send questions our way using either one of these communication tools in GoToWebinar. I also have my email open, so if you prefer to send me an email, if you're having any technical issues, please go ahead. I'll keep an eye on it and do my best to support you over email as well. Okay, so for those of you not familiar, the Alberta Council of Women Shelters, we're a member-based organization, and we act as the collective voice for 38 member organizations in Alberta who operate almost 50 shelters across the province. Our activities include networking and information sharing to support the development of leading practices in our sector, acquiring resources for shelters and project work and knowledge creation work, so research and evaluation, undertaking research to influence public policy and social change, to increase public awareness of issues related to family violence, and to provide professional development opportunities for shelter staff working in Alberta's sheltering movement. So many of the tools we're reviewing today came out of or were identified through a 4-year project that the directors of the second stage shelters in Alberta came together to initiate in 2014.
I think it began really in 2013.
Yep.
Yes.
So at the time, we had 2 shelters in the province who were funded provincially, and otherwise shelters, second stage shelters operating were piecing together funding from a number of different areas. And so this group came together to work collectively on a service model for second stage shelters and to build its advocacy toolkit for sustainable funding. And the project began with a promising practices review and the development of a second stage logic model, which many of these tools are embedded in. The implementation of new data collection tools and the phase 1 report. So the phase 1 report was published, I believe, in 2015 and played a major role in shelters receiving ongoing funding from the provincial government. So it was a big win for our collective work at that stage. There were staff and client interviews throughout the project, sort of evaluating how the implementation of the service delivery model was going, and then a second report, as well as ongoing data collection and data analysis that the second stage shelter directors continue to do with ACWS's support. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Susan. Just as a refresher, we plan to review the PSI short form. Is it a survey, assessment? Scale?
It's a scale.
Scale?
Yep, yes it is.
The goal attainment tool and some practical tools around working on goals with women, safety planning and safety questions and how to document that work through case notes, as well as the follow-up questionnaire. So touching base with women who have exited shelter on a few areas of how they're doing post-shelter.
Okay, thank you, Kat. So we'll start with talking about the Parent Stress Index 4, short form. So there is a long form. It's very complex, would be very complex to have parents complete. So Alberta Council of Women Shelters and the second stage shelter directors decided that most agreed to use the PSI-4 short form. And the Parent Stress Index is looking at a mother, we'll say mother because we are looking at second stage shelter, women that are in shelter, stress around their role as a parent. Okay. So the PSI-4 short form is a brief version of the longer version. It is a quick assessment of the issues of parenting stress. There are 36 questions that come directly from the long form. Now the PSI-4 short form is embedded in, as I said, in the longer form, that you must order the packages in order to use the PSI. And if you don't already have them, you can contact the ACWS office to order the packages. The forms themselves cannot be copied. They have carbon, and so they cannot be copied. The manual is essential to have in order to use the PSI. There's information specific to the short form on pages 57 to 62 of the manual. Okay. So the responses that mom identifies from the form can be used to help identify her areas of stress, and it can provide a roadmap for dealing with these issues. We know that stress during the first 3 years of a child's life is critical to their development and to attachment between a mom and a child. The short form is ideal to use in the shelter because it only takes about 10 minutes to complete. And as I mentioned previously, there are 36 questions. It is geared for a grade 5 level. Parents or the moms fill it out themselves. So it is for parents of children ages 12 and under. And it is recommended that you sit with the mom while she is completing it and provide her with a booklet and a pen. Answers cannot be erased. They must be crossed out with an X, and then if the correct response circled. Moms are encouraged to complete each question. If there are too many blanks that she has not responded to specific questions, then the tool is not valid. The mom is to focus on an individual child when she's completing the scale. And if she has more than one child, she may wish to complete more PSIs because she's really focusing on the relationship that she has or interaction with one child at a time. Okay, there are probably some of you that are on this webinar that have been using the PSI short form, but this is the screenshot of the front page of the form. And on the form, it does give instructions about how it is to be completed. Okay, so these are the questions. Let's give me the first 34 questions are on that page. The last 2 are the next page. And so mom completes them based on strongly agree with the statement, agree, not sure, disagree, or strongly disagree. And she's really encouraged to circle the response that first comes to her mind, not to ponder it too much. Okay. Once mom has completed it, it's probably best to then just talk to her a little bit about the scale that you will be scoring it and meeting with her again to go over what the scale is showing you. So in order for you to do that, it seems like a little bit complicated to try and explain the scoring on a webinar, but it would probably make much more sense if each of you had a copy of the scale in front of you. But what you do is you tear off the strips on the side of the form, and you remove the top sheet, which is the scoring and profiling sheet. And then when you open it, you can then, there's where you can calculate the sub-scores. So as I mentioned before, it is important that mom answer all the questions. You are able to calculate an average response if only one is missing. And that's explained more fully in the manual. But basically what it is we'll work to find an average score and then use that average score for the one item that she missed. So I'm not going to go into details about doing that. It is in the manual how you would do that. I know a lot of us are not great at math, but it goes through the steps that you would take to do the scoring if she misses one response. In order to find, I guess I backtrack, the scoring is done with sub-scores. So first of all, you add up the responses to the questions 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, and 11, and total that box, that score in the box labeled defensive responding. And I'm going to explain each of these sub-scores in a bit. And then you calculate the other sub-scale scores, the first one being parental distress, then parent-child dysfunctional interaction, and the last one being difficult child. To find the total overall stress, you add up parental distress score plus the parent-child dysfunctional interaction score and the difficult child score. You do not add in defensive responding, and that's really important that you don't. And I'll explain in the next slide why you don't do that. Okay, do you want to just go one more slide forward?
Sure. Yeah. One more.
One more. I want to just skip ahead. I should have done that to defensive responding. Okay, keep going.
Keep going. Okay.
Okay, so defensive responding is the extent to which the mom is trying to look good. And so she's trying to answer the questions in a way that will make her look like she's an effective parent. 10 or less indicates that mom may be responding in a defensive manner, but caution should be used in interpreting any of the subscale or total stress scores. So a low defensive responding score may mean that mom is trying to portray herself as confident and free of all emotional stresses. It could mean that mom is not invested in the role of being a parent, or it may be mom is very confident and doesn't experience a lot of stress in her role as a parent. So just because a mom would score 10 or less, you can't make an absolute decision about what that means. It must be taken into account with the other sub-scores. Okay, so really the defensive responding score can give you some information, but it needs to be used with the other sub-scores. Okay, we could go back now. Okay.
Go back.
Yeah.
Okay. To here.
Okay. So the scoring, as I mentioned, you add up the various sub-scores and put them into, there's a box where you will put them in. But what's important is that those raw scores are converted into percentages. And that is found on page 3 of the form. And again, if you had the form in front of you, it would make much more sense. But there is also a table in Appendix C of the PSI manual, which also provides information about converting the raw scores to percentiles. And it is these percentiles that are used to interpret what is going on for mom and how best to provide support for her. Okay, so this screenshot shows you the first page of the scoring sheet. So when you open up the form, after she has circled her responses, then you will see what she has circled, and you add those up and you put the total into the corresponding box. So the first box there is defensive responding, the next one down is parental distress, and the next one down at the very bottom there is parent-child dysfunctional interaction. Okay, so that's on And then the next page is difficult child, and the score goes in the box there. This shows you the percentile profile. So what you do is, if you look on the screen there and under PD, parental distress, the raw score is 22. So what you do in that column, you look up to where and find 22 and look across to find the percentage. So a raw score of 22 for parental distress is 36. For parent-child dysfunctional interaction, the raw score for this one was 24. You go up that scale, find 24, and look across and find the percentage, and so on. Okay, we can go on to the next one. Okay. See, the important thing is not just to get mom to fill out this scale for the sake of filling out the scale. It really is to provide you with some information about the kind of stress that mom is experiencing in her role as a parent. And it may be that within your shelters that it may not be you yourself that is sitting with mom when she's completing this. It may be child support staff. It may be if you have a child trauma worker in your shelter that may be using this scale. This information about understanding the scoring is in the manual. And again, that's why it's really important that you purchase the manual and the score sheets. Normal ranges for scores is within the 16th to 84th percentiles, which is a huge range, but that is considered normal. Scores between the 85th to 89th percentiles are considered high, and scores in the 90 percentile or higher are considered clinically significant. Okay, we can skip over you. Okay. So let's look at parental distress. This is the degree to which mom is experiencing stress in a role as a parent. So it's not looking at her role as a workplace stress or anything like that. It really zeroes in on her role as a parent. It looks at her sense of parenting competency, the stresses associated with restrictions on her life, conflict with the child's other parent, her social support or lack of, and depression. So scores at or above 90% usually would indicate that most of the work would be geared towards working with mom on herself and helping her with maybe accessing some supports for herself. Scores at or above 90% in combination with a difficult child score below the 75th percentile. Mom might benefit from activities aimed at self-esteem or sense of her parenting competency. So it's really difficult to just look at one subscore and know where the intervention should focus. It really is looking at each of the subscales and looking at them and seeing how they relate to each other. And the parent-child dysfunctional interaction, this is really focusing on that interaction between mom and the child and the extent to which mom believes the child does not meet her expectations and that their interactions are not satisfying. High scores may indicate the mom sees the child as a disappointment, feels rejected or alienated from the child, or it could show that there hasn't been attachment with the child. It may result in a lack of warmth. And we need to be really cautious about high scores. It could suggest the potential for child abuse. But again, you need to look at those high scores with caution. You need to look at the total stress as well as the subscale scores. If all three are high, then the chances of child abuse are greater. But again, you need to take that be very cautious and also take into account your observations of how you see mom interacting with the child. If the parent distress subscore is 75% or lower, the chances of parental loss of control is less. And again, you look at both the scores. If they're both high for the parent-child dysfunctional interaction and the difficult child subscores are in the high 90s, and the parental distress scale is in the 70% or lower, it is then likely the mom is able to cope with challenging behavior of the child. When a child is over the age of 2, because we know that 2-year-olds and younger may present different kinds of challenges, and scores that are above the 90%, this may indicate that mom is having a difficult time gaining the child's cooperation. Scores at or above 85%, it may be best that mom be given age-appropriate activities to do with the child. It's important that mom is given opportunities to interact and play with the child in order to help that parent-child interaction. So opportunities to play together or filial therapy may be useful. It's really about strengthening that bond between the mom and the child. Okay, the difficult child subscore gives you an indication of how easy or difficult mom perceives her child to be. So again, it's mom's perception. And it focuses on some of the basic behavioral characteristics of children that make them easy or difficult to manage. At 18 months or younger, scores at or above 90% may indicate a child is having problems with self-regulation. So it may mean a referral to a pediatrician or not. But again, all these scores need to be looked at and how they interact with each other. Okay, so with a difficult child, mom may benefit from learning age-appropriate discipline. There may be a need for referral for play therapy or perhaps a child psychologist. If the difficult child subscore is in the 90% or higher, but the other subscores are lower, in the 75% or lower, maybe parent education strategies may be sufficient. Okay. And then, as I mentioned previously, looking at the total stress that mom may be experiencing, you do not add in the defensive responding, but you add in the 3 other subscores to get a sense of the measure of stress mom is experiencing overall in her role as a parent. So when the overall score is at or above the 91% level, mom may benefit from more individualized support. And so we don't just do this for the sake of doing it. It is important that whenever we ask a mom in the shelter to do any kind of a scale or a self-report measure, that they understand why you're asking them to do that. And it really is to help mom, as well as the professionals in the shelter, understand the stress that she's under. And it can provide a guide for interventions with the mom. So it's really to help with strategies to address what the tool is showing you. It is important to explore more, to ask questions of mom. What was it like when they were living in the relationship? How has she handled these behaviors in the past? What kinds of things does she do to take care of herself? So it's important to use the tool as a teaching tool. It's important to be sensitive. Our parenting roles are one of the most significant roles that any mom will have, so we need to be sensitive and not critical about how she's functioning as a mom. It's important to be kind and use strength-based words. In second stage shelter, because moms and children are often there for an extended period of time, You are encouraged to ask mom to complete the PSI early on in her stay, and then again, if possible, near the time that she and her child will be leaving the shelter. And again, it's important both times to sit down and chat with mama about what the scores mean. And it's important to focus on the changes that she has made as a parent. So what is different from the time she came into the shelter and at the time she is leaving? And it's really important that you focus on having her as well talk about how she feels differently as a parent or what changes she has made. Okay, I'm aware that not everyone on this webinar are using Outcome Tracker, but I thought I would just show you, give you a screenshot that if your shelter is already using the PSI, then there should be a tab in the mom's file that you can access to enter the information. If you do not have the PSI tab as yet, or you're still considering whether or not your shelter would like to use the PSI, you will not see the tab. Mm-hmm. If you do decide that you are going to use the PSI, as I said, and contact ACWS about purchasing copies of the PSI and the manual, and then at that time, the ACWS will make a request to VistaShare to add the tab to your file. Yes. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we'll stop right there. I know that's a lot of information to do on a webinar. Any questions, comments? None?
So none at this point. Do feel free, if anything comes up, to send it our way. We're keeping an eye on. Oh, here we go. We have a question.
I see that. Okay. Ashley has asked, is it appropriate to use the PSI for teens? No, it isn't, and I think I skipped over that. The PSI is for 12 years and under, and so it's not for teens. Okay, thanks for the question.
Okay, well, maybe we will carry on to the goal attainment. And again, if any questions come up about the PSI as we move through the rest of the content, don't hesitate to send it our way and we'll address it as it comes up.
Just before we go on to the goal attainment, so for those of you that are not using Outcome Tracker, it is still possible to use the PSI. And my understanding is ACWS will work with your shelters,
yes,
to be able to collect that information.
Yes, absolutely.
And the PSI is one of the tools that a majority of second stage shelter directors have agreed that they would like to collect as a collective. Okay. Okay, we'll go on to goal attainment. And so many of you have been using the goal attainment for some time. The goal attainment was developed largely by input with second stage shelter directors, and it's undergone a few little changes, but it's been an important part of the second stage project. So goal setting, and probably all of you are aware of this, but it's a really essential part of case management. It's about working with women when they're admitted into the shelter to determine what they would like to have different at the end of the time that they're in the second stage shelter. What do they want to work on? What problems or issues do they want to address while living in second stage? So it's about women setting their own goals with shelter workers supporting them in that process. So it is a shared process where you would provide guidance and support. So a goal attainment involves sitting with women and helping them identify a problem and agreeing upon a collaborative goal definition. So what is the goal? And then developing a plan of action. The goals need to be regularly assessed to make sure that there's progress, and also determine if there's things that are getting in the way of women working towards their goals. Goal setting doesn't just happen once, it's sort of an ongoing process. Women may add additional goals throughout the time that they're in second stage shelter. So it is important to revisit the goals and make modifications throughout a woman's stay. Goal setting provides a solid foundation for the focus of work. So that's what makes staying in the second stage shelter different than just going to live in subsidized housing. It's an opportunity to have support to work on achieving changes in her life. And the action plan provides a roadmap or guidance for women to take small steps towards achieving their goals. Ideally, if possible, it is important to meet with women within the first month that they are in second stage to establish, at least to begin to establish, some of the goals that they want to work on. When the second stage shelter directors were working on this goal attainment tool, there was a lot of discussion around the importance of encouraging women to work on goals in the area of safety, accommodation or housing, and networking within the community. So these are the areas where women are encouraged to work on. Safety is the main work of shelters. And because second stage shelters are not permanent, most women will be working towards finding an alternative housing once they're ready to leave second stage. We do know that some women who've been in second stage will return to partner, and so their goal may look a little bit differently. And it is important for women to feel connected in the community. It's important for women to be able to select as many areas as possible that they want to work on to achieve their goals, and to have a goal statement for each of their goal areas.
Okay. So Susan, we do have a question. Do you want to address
Sure,
it now, or would
sure.
you like to take a break?
Yeah,
okay.
We can do that now. Okay.
So we have a question about data entry in Outcome Tracker for the goal attainment tool. So I would say that in consultation with us, we can certainly adapt the tool. So this, Ilya is asking if we can add some text boxes to permit staff to provide a little bit more context for progress tracking for goals. And I would say that that is something that we could do together. So ACWS and a shelter together if they would like to look at the tool and make these types of changes. But we would ask that you not go ahead and make those changes without consulting with us, just to ensure that our ability to roll up that data isn't compromised by any changes that are made on the form. So does that answer your question, Ilya? Awesome, great.
Okay, good question.
Did it go? Oh, sorry.
Okay. Okay. So when we're working with women to help them look at goals, I often thought that the term goal may not fit for a lot of women. That might not be something that they're familiar with. So it's important to use language that you feel would resonate with individual women. So it really is about helping them decide what do they want to be different in their lives. So in terms of, you don't need to talk to them about SMART goals, but it's something to keep in mind as you're helping them figure out what they want to be different. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So what makes a goal fit within that SMART goal criteria is one that is really specific, and she will be able to know if she has made progress or achieved that goal. So simply to say, I want to be happy, is very difficult to measure and know if it's been achieved. So it needs to be more specific and measurable. And large goals need to be broken down into small goals. So rather than just say, I want to lose weight, it would be something that would be, I would like to lose 10 pounds by the end of 2019. And so it really needs to look at, is it realistic and relevant and time bound? And then within that, it would be broken down into smaller steps. So what would need to happen? What's one small step that would need to be taken? Okay. The second stage shelter directors had lots of discussion when creating this goal attainment tool, but talked about the importance of the goals being reviewed and not just set when a woman comes into the shelter, but being reviewed after approximately 3 months, and then again close to the time that a woman is moving out of second stage shelter. So I know that many of you, your shelters do have women for a year or some up to 2 years. So within that period of time, it would be really beneficial to review the goals at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then again before someone is leaving the shelter, to really be able to track her progress in working towards the overall goals. And women may be leaving a second stage shelter and have not yet fully achieved their goals, and that's fine. It's important that as a collective to look at what do women need, what kinds of supports do women need in order to work towards achieving these goals, and also what is getting in the way or what's making it difficult for women to achieve these goals. Okay, so as I just mentioned, some women may work very hard to achieve a goal and still not make progress due to service barriers. So in Outcome Tracker, for those of you that are using Outcome Tracker, there is a field to indicate if goals are not achieved due to service barriers. And so that would be important to indicate if that is an issue. In your own notes, you may want to document more clearly what are those barriers that are getting in the way of women meeting their goals. Currently, there is not a field in Outcome Tracker, but that may be one that might be a good one to add. Yep. With some consultation. Okay. And these are some examples of questions that might assist in goal setting in the goal setting process. As I said, that whole terminology of goals may not be common to women's experience. But some things like, what are some of the things that you would like to work on during our time together? At the end of your stay, what would you like to be different in your life? How will things be different? What is the most important area you want to work on together? And the second stage shelter directors developed a list of goal themes, which I'll go over in a couple of slides, but that may be helpful to have with you and have the woman look at those goal themes and to see if anything jumps out at her, things that she might have not thought about, but things that she would like to work on. You could say something, I believe that everyone has strengths, skills, and abilities. What are some ways that you have worked on this goal before, or what are things that you've done before to work towards making that change in your life? And how will you know that you have made progress? What will be different in your life? So I just put down some examples of goals that you may consider working with women on, or women may consider. One might be, I want to live in a subsidized townhouse in the north part of the city. And then it's broken down into smaller steps. And these would be the steps that you would help her figure out that she would do in order to work towards reaching her overall goal. I will contact the subsidized housing agency for an application by the end of February. I'll ensure that the application is delivered by a certain date. I will follow up with a phone call, and then we'll go on and on and on until hopefully she would actually achieve her goal. Safety goal might be, I want to obtain a restraining order so that my ex-partner is not able to come to my place of employment. That could be broken down. I will contact legal aid for an appointment by January 30th. I will complete all the documentation required for an affidavit for the restraining order by February 15th, and then there would be additional smaller goals working towards that bigger goal of obtaining a restraining order. An example of a community resources goal. I want to meet other moms with preschool children in the area that I'm moving to. I will contact the Community Association by February 15th to get a copy of their newsletter. I will go to the Community Resource Center to see what programs they offer by February 25th. I will enroll in a Mom and Tots group by the 1st of March, and so on. The way the goal attainment tool has been set up is that initially there is the time where you set the goal. So again, you're encouraged to set that goal within the first month. And then there are various goal evaluation periods. First goal evaluation recommended around 3 months, second goal 6 months, third goal evaluation at 9 months, fourth goal evaluation 12 months or just prior to departure.
I'm noticing another question. Do you mind?
Sure. Okay.
Pause.
Okay.
Okay. So the question is, what do service barriers mean at that big picture level, so across all shelters? Or is this something that each shelter is permitted to determine on their own, I guess, or can determine? Permitted.
Permitted. I would think it would need to be an individual shelter.
Yeah.
Whatever the woman is determining that I can't make this goal work for myself. I'm running into barriers all the time. So it really is an individual thing. It could be something like she wants to move to subsidized housing, but because when she was living with her partner, it looked like that their income was over a certain level. So that's certainly a barrier that would get in the way of her achieving her goal of accessing subsidized housing.
Mm-hmm. I just want to add too that I think so we have shelters all across Alberta, and I think each community is going to find that there are barriers that are unique to their community, and it's important that that's reflected in how you track service barriers as well. So distance may be a barrier that we want documented or that you need to document as preventing a woman from making progress. Does that make sense, Ilya? Great. Okay. Thank you for your questions.
Okay. Mm-hmm. When you're assessing the progress of the goal, and I'm talking about Outcome Tracker here, so those shelters that do not use Outcome Tracker, it's still possible to use the goal attainment scale, but we're looking at a scale from 1 to 5. So when she sets the goal, likely there's little or no progress, or it may be a goal that she has worked on prior to coming into second stage shelter. So there might be some progress even when she's setting that goal. So it could be limited progress, but each time you sit down with her to review those goals and how things are going, then you would identify what level of progress has been made with that particular goal. And this is in Outcome Tracker for those that are using Outcome Tracker. There are a number of goal areas that have been identified by the second stage shelter directors. I'm not going to go through them all in detail, but I believe that Kat sent out the tools document.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the resource kit for second stage shelters has all the background information for the tools that were initiated by the second stage shelter group back in 2015. So you can refer to it for more information on any of the tools we covered today, as well as some tools that you may be interested in that we're not talking about in this session.
Okay, so within that documentation under the goal attainment scale, there is information about each of these goal areas that Second Stage Shelter directors identified as being areas where women within second stage typically work on various goals. So for each of these goal areas, there's some examples of what women might be working on, and gives a clearer understanding of what is meant by each of these goal areas. Okay. Those are additional goal areas, and then there's one more screen. And there's also the option of, if a woman identifies something she wants to work on that does not fit with one of these goal areas, certainly that is fine, and you use the other category. Within that documentation that Kat sent out, there is a copy of a paper copy that you might find useful when you're tracking the information on paper of where a woman's at in terms of the work on these various goals. That may be useful for you. Okay. And this is a screenshot of.
Oh, this actually is probably the new one.
Right, which is okay. Okay, so I was under the impression that the goal attainment tool and outcome tracker had been changed. Apparently it has not. So you will not see goal attainment new, you will see goal attainment tab. Yes. in your outcome tracker sites.
Yes, so I have been in the ACWS site imagining a new format for the goal attainment to support our reporting, but that has not been rolled out through shelters. So you'll be looking for the goal attainment tab, and we can even hop into outcome tracker and look at it at
Sure.
the end of.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll come back to it. Okay.
Okay. Any questions or comments about goal attainment?
Okay, so we have a question. Some progress and good progress seems to be subjective. Is it from the woman's perspective then, or is it, I guess, the alternative would be worker rated?
Yeah, I would say it should be mainly her perspective of how things have been. Certainly you could have a discussion. If she says, oh, I haven't made any changes, nothing's different. And they say, well, let's chat about that. Okay, how were things when you first came into the shelter around this goal? And what does it look like now? So I think it's helpful to have a discussion about it. And it's really about her being able to understand her own process. And I think that's really important. But remembering that it's about conversations with her. Does that answer the question?
Okay, let us know, Susan, if you'd like any more clarity on that question. Oh, and we have
Another one.
Let's see, we have someone who put their hand up, which is, oh, okay. So that was Susan.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. So I don't want to derail, but do you want to go into outcome tracker and look at the goal attainment?
Sure.
And review? Okay.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. So in Outcome Tracker, in the woman's records, there will be a goal attainment tab available to you. Ours appears to be purple. Does this look familiar to you?
It does. And I apologize because it does not appear that the service barriers is in here.
It's in here, okay.
No.
So this could be that the wrong form is displaying. This is unfortunate.
But maybe it never got put in.
Let's look at the. There. We can review it this way.
Okay. Okay, so when we look at it this way, there's the unable to achieve women's safety goals due to service barriers. So the service barriers field is for each of the areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a field at the top. So through the activity list, and some of you may have a data entry tab, but we'll show you through the activity list. So once I'm in a woman's record and I go to the activity list, I can scroll down to the bottom of all of her activities. She has many. Enroll in activity. And in this description field, search for the appropriate tool. I have goal attainment in my list here. It's probably showing up in that pop-up. There we go. So we have the date of your session with a woman. The type of program we ask you to indicate on all tools. So whether, in this case, it would be second stage residential, you may use this tool in other program areas. And then the goal setting and evaluation. So Susan reviewed those. That schedule of goal evaluation. So this may be the initial goal setting for your first meeting. And then follow-ups, you would use the subsequent options to evaluate that particular goal. And do you want to?
Okay, and then as you look down, all the identified goal areas are listed. So women's safety. So you want to click on women's safety, the drop down. So if it's first goal, setting the goal, there may be little or no progress, so that you would do that. But the next time could be the second goal of first goal evaluation. There could be some progress. Again, if it's woman has been unable to achieve her safety goals due to service barriers, it could be that she did not qualify for legal aid, again, because of an income restriction. So then that would be a yes. So each time a new goal would be set, you'd go in and add, you put in a new one, add another. So because there would be a new date for the, it was a new goal. Okay.
Okay. Close this. Okay.
We'll move on to talk about safety questions. Okay, so again, this is very specific to those of you using Outcome Tracker. So the safety questions are located on the case note form in your Outcome Tracker sites. Now, so if they're not, they could be added. If you're not using Outcome Tracker, certainly there is a way to still collect this information, right? So Alberta Council of Women's Shelters could work with you to how would you collect this information. And the reason for the specific safety questions being collected, it's been noted that prior to these questions being embedded in some of your shelter's contact form, that the women's exit survey, women's feedback survey, there's a question there about I believe it was that, or it was an ACWS questionnaire, the number of safety plans that were completed. And it was quite low compared to the number of women that access shelters in the province. And we know that that's probably not the case, that safety is probably talked about with almost every woman that accesses the shelter. So the safety questions were it was decided by second stage shelter directors. It was important to really highlight the importance of safety, and it was decided that additional questions would be added to the case note form. So these questions provide more specific information about the types of activities that are involved in safety planning. So it's not just about a formalized sit-down review a safety planning form. There's many other ways that safety is talked about in the shelter. And it's also important that we somehow capture this information that safety is not a one-time event, or safety planning is not a one-time event. It's something that happens throughout a woman's stay in a shelter. Okay. So the way that it has been, the safety questions have been embedded in Outcome Tracker is as follows. There's a heading safety plan and a drop-down, developed a safety plan or changed an existing safety plan. And then there is a drop-down if you've said yes to either of the above. There's a drop-down where you can select as many of these as need be in your work with a woman on that particular day. Used information from the danger assessment tools, used Pop-Tarts. Those of you that have taken the danger assessment training probably are familiar with the Pop-Tarts tool. The Pop-Tarts tool was developed as part of the Walking Path Together project. Used information about the abuser as available. So whether or not there's been other charges, whether there's a restraining order, that kind of information. Provided an informal safety checker plan. And that was one that shelter directors talked a lot about, that sometimes women say, I'm just running to the store to buy a pop, and on their way out, someone will just quickly do a safety check with the woman about running to the store, what would happen if, and just so she's really always aware of being safe. It could be that you worked with the woman's children to carry out some safety planning. Okay. Provided safe transportation or escort, and I know that that happens more in the rural communities where you're transporting women. Provide a court accompaniment, discuss safety and technology, made a referral for emergency protection orders, contacted police, contacted gun registry, contacted child welfare or other. So this list of possible safety measures was developed by the second stage shelter directors. Okay. And as I said, these questions are embedded in some of your contact forms. And if they're not, and you would like to use them, you would contact ACWS, right, Kat?
Mm-hmm.
And for the shelters or shelter that's not using Outcome Tracker, certainly you can use these questions as well.
Yes.
And contact Kat or ACWS about how that information can be used in the second stage shelter work.
Yes, and I believe the definitions are also in that background, the resource kit.
Yes.
So if you want to build into your own data management tools the same questions and definitions, those definitions are available to you in the resource kit as well. I'm just noticing a question, Susan. Do you mind if we check in?
Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So I will send the PowerPoint to everyone today after the webinar. I'll make it available to you. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay. So are there any other questions about the safety planning, data collection tools, or areas that we have just covered with Susan? I see another question coming in. Oh, yes. Just a follow-up to the request for a PowerPoint.
Okay.
So, yeah, so feel free to send questions along and we'll circle back if we need to. Is there a need for a bit of a break? We're about an hour in, and on our training on Tuesday, I didn't offer a break, but I do wonder if we want to take 5 minutes and then reconnect at about 5 after 10. Does that work for everybody? Okay, enthusiastic yeses. Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, we'll mute our mic here and we will give you guys, about 5 minutes or so, give or take, and we will cover the follow-up questionnaire and then just have a general touch base about any outstanding questions you guys have. Enjoy. Okay, everyone, we're back. I'm just going to check in and see if any questions or comments came in while we were away, and then Susan will pick up where we left off. But I think all is looking good, and we're ready to go. I'll just tuck this out of the way. Okay.
Okay. What we're going to focus on now are follow-up questions, and that may be a bit confusing because some of you have follow-up workers, some of you have follow-up programs, outreach programs, etc. But a while back, it was decided at the second stage shelter directors meeting that it would be really important to make contact with women who had left second stage shelters for a minimum of 3 months, but where there was someone still making some connection with that woman or that family. So whether it be a follow-up or an outreach worker, or I guess a shelter worker, where there was some contact with these women to see how they were managing post-second stage shelter. And I believe it was maybe a couple of years ago where there was a lot of information that was compiled as a result of these follow-up questions. That's almost seems to have fallen by the wayside a bit now, but in talking with Kat and Irene, and I believe second stage shelters have also agreed that this kind of follow-up questions do provide useful information. So some of you may have these follow-up questions available in your site. And if not, again, you can contact ACWS to have them put into your outcome tracker site. And it likely would be, as I said, an outreach or follow-up worker that would meet with women to ask them various questions about how are they doing now that they've left second stage and now out in the community. Okay. These follow-up questions are not in that package of information that Kat sent out because they were developed after that package was put together. So you'll have these in the slides that will be sent out. What we'll need to do is probably then send out the full questions because on the slides we don't have all the drop downs, the choices. Okay. Gotcha. But basically the questions are asking the type of housing that women are living in post shelter, their living situation, which is different than the type of housing. So type of housing may mean that they're in their owned home or they're in supported housing. So there are a number of drop downs to that question. Their living situation, if they're on their own with their children, if they're living with family or friends, or living with partner. There's a number of drop downs for that. And then their source of income, again, it's a drop down menu. There's a question, then a text field or an open-ended question for the woman to describe her financial situation to provide more clarity around how she's managing financially. Question about her employment status, again with a drop down and an area for comments about her employment status, whether she's attending an educational institution, the types of services provided by the shelter post-second stage. So whether she's attending a group or receiving individual support, whether her children are receiving support, there's again a drop down where to identify what kinds of support she's receiving. Okay. Community supports that she is accessing. So this is not just about referrals that were made, but what is she actually involved with out in the community that she is accessing. And then there's a question asking her, as a result of her stay in second stage, she has gained knowledge about how to keep herself and her children safer, and on a scale from 1 to 4, so 1 being strongly disagrees and 4 strongly agrees. and then asking her if she feels safer since her stay in second stage shelter. And again, the same scale, 1 to 4, 1 being strongly disagrees or 4 strongly agrees. And then just a conversation with the woman about her self-assessment of how well she is managing since she has left second stage. Okay. So this kind of information is really important to really get a sense of the impact of women staying in second stage. And then again, the supports that she's getting once she has left second stage and how that is important for her. Okay. Any questions about that?
So not at this time. Okay. So Susan, do you want to make any final comments about the tools in general? I have a few comments to make, but okay, I invite you to.
Okay. What I would say that the tools that the second stage shelter directors discussed and agreed upon, I believe it's been really helpful for those shelters that are collecting that information, and that aggregate data has been really useful in understanding the importance of different types of interventions in second stage. So I encourage you to have a look at that document that Kat sent out yesterday. There are other tools, as Kat mentioned, that are described in that document. So I would imagine you're all familiar with the danger assessment. And so certainly that's very important that women in second stage have their danger assessments redone or reviewed, and then ideally redone before they leave the shelter as part of that safety planning process. And there are other tools that some shelters are using, like the Domestic Violence Survivor Assessment Tool is one. So
impact of events.
Impact of event scale. And there are a number of demographic information that is being collected.
Yes.
And discharge information that is being collected. And that information is identified in that document that Kat sent out yesterday. Okay, Kat.
Yes. So I just want to add, so these were the 4 tools that we covered today were tools that, as Susan mentioned, played a significant role in the advocacy for this shelter group, and we wanted to offer you the opportunity to revisit them or explore implementing them in your own shelter. Ultimately, decisions about tools are at a shelter's discretion. So I do just want to clarify that point, that you know, these are options for you, and we are here to support you with data collection and implementation of these tools. But ultimately, you will proceed with your programs as needed based on the need that you identify. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the second stage project in general and how some of these tools have been rolled up, I've provided a link here to the reports and research section of our ACWS website, where the second stage reports are available to the public. So do feel free to access them there. And additional training around the additional tools that Susan mentioned and these tools, those requests for training can be sent to our OT support email. Normally I'd give you my personal email, but I'm about to go on parental leave. So this will be the email that will outlast all ACWS staff. So if you need to connect with anybody for additional information, that is the best place to go. And your request will be directed as needed to either Katie, who is our training coordinator or advisor, to myself, to any of the subject matter experts we work with. We will get your questions addressed as quickly as possible. Okay, so any last questions? We are wrapping up quite a bit ahead of schedule, and are happy to open up to a discussion or leave you to sign off a little bit early. Okay. Well, I think we'll go with the latter. We will sign things off a bit early. Thank you, Susan, very much for joining us today and providing this training to our members. And thank you, everyone, for your interest in these tools and for participating in our ongoing work as a collective.
Yes, thank you very much.
Have a great day.